What's going on, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Healthy-ish with Nutrishmish. This week is a solo episode. Next week, we're going to have some cool people on for you, but I wanted you guys all to myself today. I was being selfish. But I wanted to talk today about something that I've seen so many people struggle with, and if you do struggle with this, it is like one of the most frustrating things because your brain says one thing, but then you do another, and you're like, what the heck? And it's self-sabotage. So if you've experienced this, you know how frustrating it can be. You want to do X, Y, and Z. You want to accomplish X, Y, and Z, but then when push comes to shove, you either stop yourself short or you do something that you know is going to prevent you from doing it, and then you never get to your goals. So wherever you are on your health journey or your weight loss journey or your nutrition journey, whatever journey you're on, if you're somebody who has engaged in self-sabotage before, you are going to walk away from this episode knowing why it happens, what it actually is, what it means, and then we're going to give you a ton of tips and tricks as to how to prevent it for next time that it happens. If it's something that you struggle with, it's very likely that it's a chronic thing. It will happen again, but by the end of this episode, you will know what to do to stop it entirely. So let's dive in. But before you do that, if you can do me a quick fave and rate this podcast, give it 5 stars just for, good karma. And also make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So just make sure you do those 2 things first. And now let's get into the juicy stuff. So let's first talk about what self-sabotage is, because there's going to be some people listening who are like painfully aware that they do it. And then there's going to be some people listening that are like, oh my gosh, I would never do that to myself. But then when you hear some of these examples, you might be like, oh no, shit, I do that. So to kind of just summarize it, self-sabotage is when the way that you think or when your mind kind of becomes the enemy and prevents you from achieving your goals. It starts negatively impacting your behavior. So you're like, I want to go left, but your brain's like, no, go right. So I'm going to give you some examples as pertaining to weight loss and nutrition. And the way that I'm going to be talking about it, it's talking about it in somebody who is probably in that like dieting mindset still. These are not things that I want people to say. These are not things that I agree with, but this is how people usually come in until we can change their mindset around it and getting them to think differently. But one really good example is the person that maybe comes in and they know exactly what to do. They could write the book on nutrition and weight loss. They could tell you everything that you quote unquote should be doing, but they just can't do it themselves consistently. That's a great example of somebody who might be engaging in self-sabotage. Another great example of this is maybe based on experience, right? So let's say, you've tried dieting before or losing weight, however you like to lose it, and through no fault of your own, usually it's the program's fault, but you hit that 10-pound mark and then you literally just can't do it anymore. So now you're maybe trying it a different way or maybe even the same way, and you hit that 10-pound mark and you're like, oh, I never get past this. Almost like secretly, like if somebody said like, this is your goal, like you can say your goal out loud, but like you don't even believe that you're actually going to achieve it. So you hit that like 10-pound mark that you always hit, and then you're like, yep, nope, this is what I do. And then you maybe subconsciously or consciously like get sloppy, like you stop maybe tracking your food if that's what you're doing, or you start engaging in just like eating crazy for no reason, or maybe you're like, what, might as well just have X, Y, and Z because the other shoe always drops, so might as well me drop it before it drops itself. Those types of things. So those are a couple examples of self-sabotage. It could also look like, let's say you get on the scale and let's say you had a really great week. And, you have to remember the scale doesn't always reflect in real time. I've had so many clients come in who've had amazing weeks and they get on the scale, nothing happens. And my answer to them is usually like, give it one more day, because you have to remember your body doesn't know what 7 days is. 7 days is kind of this made up construct that we have. So sometimes it may take 6, sometimes it might take 8. And when I tell my clients to do that, 9 times out of 10, I'll get a text message in the morning and it'll be like, oh my God, you were totally right. Like now I see it. But let's say that you are so into the diet culture thing and you're so obsessed with the scale and you get on the scale and even though you had a great week, it doesn't show what you think it should, or maybe it's down but not enough, and you're like, well, why bother? Even though you want to hit that goal, you're like, well, why bother? And you stop and you go back to your old eating habits. It could work the opposite way too. I've seen so many people hit their goals or get very close to their goals, and then there's almost a fear of success. Like, you know what, every single time that I do this, it always comes back. And if maybe when somebody compliments that person, they'll be like, oh my gosh, somebody might say you've lost weight. And, the person intends it as a compliment, but the other person is thinking, well, I've gained and lost weight a million times before. So if they're noticing that I'm losing it now, they're definitely going to notice when I gain it. So, you know what, let me just pull the plug and let me be the one that you know, does this. And then they kind of like go off the handle in the other way. It's almost like a fear of success. So sometimes it gets triggered when people notice their weight loss. So those are just a couple of different examples of self-sabotage. So there's many, many more, but if that resonates with you or that concept resonates with you, now we want to get into why we do it, because the more you understand what it is and why it happens, the more the solutions will work for you. So in my experience, self-sabotage comes from two things, usually both of them, sometimes one or the other. One is a lack of confidence or self-confidence even, which is usually through experience, through no fault of your own, which we're going to dive into that in a little bit. So it's usually a lack of self-confidence or lack of confidence that what you're doing is going to deliver the result that you want. And the other one is your brain's wanting to avoid pain. Your brain the human brain is always trying to move towards things that make it feel good and away from things that make it feel bad. So typically people who engage in self-sabotaging behavior with weight loss or nutrition, sometimes it's just like a core personality trait. Sometimes, you know, it's just something that is just, you'll find it in many areas of your life. But quite often, if it's just specific to nutrition or weight loss, quite often it's based off of past experiences. Because let's think about it. Most people, the first time that they're trying to lose weight, which what I always say is if you're trying to lose it, you should not find it again. So all of these diet programs, man, they're just... I can go on, that'll be a whole other episode. We won't go on a tangent right now. But if your experience has been that you gained and lost it back, which if that has been your experience, you're well within the majority, because 95% of people that go on any given diet program will gain it back within a year. 95%, meaning there's 5 people out of every 100 that do this that will actually see long-term results. And the reason is because dieting doesn't teach you how to eat properly. Dieting doesn't teach you how to eat right. Dieting teaches you how to diet. And maybe there's a time and a place for a diet. Like, I don't hate a diet like right before your wedding, or if it's not going to trigger obviously like bad behavior, but right before maybe like a vacation, again, if it's not going to trigger, you know, a bad relationship with food or something. I think there's a time and a place for it, you know, like I'm getting married. Oh, in theory, I'm a COVID bride. So in theory, I'm getting married in October, mid-October. So yeah, probably like 2 weeks before I might engage in some like diety behavior, but it's a tool and I'm using it for a specific period of time. And then I'm well aware that it will probably come back after the wedding, but that's fine because I just need it for that, you know, for that day. Or in our case, it's 4 days. We're doing a destination, but just for the day, right? So, so if we're used to engaging in these kind of diet programs, right? And then the weight always comes back, of course, we're going to lack confidence that this time is going to be different. Like, prove it to me, you know? So that's where like the lack of confidence comes from, but it's not your fault. Like when you're on a diet, it is literally impossible to stick to forever, right? So if I'm on a low carb diet, like, listen, there are some amazing people out there, I guess, that can cut out carbs forever. I, being half Italian, am not one of them. Also a foodie, I'm not one of them. So I cannot cut out carbs for the rest of my life, right? I can't eat boxed packaged meals for the rest of my life. I can't, you know, restrict my calories for the rest of my life. So once you stop doing the thing that helped you lose the weight in the first place, that's going to come back. That's why there's a very, very, very big difference between intentional weight loss or intentional weight manipulation, which comes through dieting, versus somebody who's just trying to change their eating habits, and as a result, the weight comes off. If you're just optimizing your eating habits, you're just trying to eat healthier, right? A lot of times, for people, for not everybody, but for a lot of people, if your weight is a little bit high because of your current eating habits, when you address that, you will lose weight, and that will be more of a permanent thing. But if your specific goal is not to optimize your eating habits, your specific goal is weight loss, then all the ways that are kind of, you know, culturally around that will are things that you're not going to be able to do forever, and they're things you're not going to be able to do long term. So once you stop the thing that helped you lose the weight in the first place and you go back to your old habits, like, right, of course it's going to come back. So that person who, you know, always loses like that 10 pounds and then, you know, reverts back, that's their experience. You know, if we said that this was like a romantic relationship, right? Let's say I've been in like 5 romantic relationships, and every single one I've dated guys that have cheated on me after 6 months. Well, in the relationship that I'm in now, I'm assuming that this guy is going to cheat on me in 6 months, so I might break up with him, right? Even though I don't have any evidence to believe that this person is going to cheat on me, just because that's been my experience. We're at the 6-month mark, so you know what? Let me sabotage it before this person does. Just to kind of like parallel it to something that doesn't have to do with nutrition or weight loss, because sometimes you can see things a little bit clearer when you look at it with something that has nothing to do with nutrition or weight loss. So I hope this is starting to make a little bit of sense to you. So we engage in this behavior when we lack confidence, and we're lacking confidence not because of anything that is your fault. You're lacking confidence because your past experiences have been with bad methods. Your past experiences have been with methods that want you to gain it back. Because listen, I've said this a million times. If you try to lose weight through so-and-so program and then you actually keep it off, guess who they lose as a client? You. If you're a repeat customer to any kind of diet company, that's a problem, right? Because not a problem, it's good for them, but it's not great for you. And they want to keep you in that loop. They want to keep taking your money. So the ways that they're going to have you get there are not going to be long-term solutions. They're going to be those quick fix solutions. But that's been your experience. So that's why you might lack confidence in that area, which promotes self-sabotage. Just like this person who has been in a million relationships might sabotage her relationship because her experience has been, after 6 months, this is what happens. The problem is that she's just been with bad partners, right? The problem with this is that you've just chosen not so great methods, right? But if we get a good method or we get a good partner in there, it changes the whole thing. So I hope this is starting to make sense for you guys. So the second part of that equation is that the brain always wants to move towards things that make it feel good and away from things that make it feel bad. And there's a couple different layers of this. So on the very outer surface of this, if you're constantly, and I'm using this in quotation marks, failing at something, that doesn't feel good, right? If you're like, I'm dying to get to this weight, or I'm dying to change my eating habits, or I'm dying to do whatever, and every single time you are met with an obstacle and you can't seem to get past it, well, that's not going to feel good when you feel like you're failing at something that doesn't feel good. So your brain's like, let's just avoid this altogether. Let's forget the whole thing. Let's just like forget it, and you're good at other things. So your brain's just trying to like protect you. So when things start to feel bad, your brain's like, no, we don't want to feel bad, we want it to feel good. So let's just forget it. Let's just do it when it's easier. We'll start again. We'll start over on Monday. We'll start over in January. It's a crazy time right now, so now's not a great time. So we'll just do it another time. So that's what your brain does because it doesn't feel good. The other thing that's interesting is most diet programs, which is what people usually use when they're trying to lose weight, are centered around restriction. I don't know about you. I personally don't like to be restricted. If you tell me I can't have something, it's all I'm going to want. And that's very human nature, right? Even think about, like, again, just going back to relationships, because that's an easy parallel. You probably didn't like the guy or girl in high school that liked you. You probably liked the guy or girl in high school that didn't like you, until they did like you, and then you probably lost interest. That's just the messed up ways that the human mind works, right? But we got to work with the human mind because that's what we got. So whenever you feel restricted or whenever you feel like you can't have something, it's all you're going to want. When I was in college a million years ago, I was working with these people that were on like a medical, it was like an internship. It was like a very like severe, like low carby type of diet for people who really needed that. Well, they were told they really needed that. I now would say differently, but that's another point entirely. But my point is that they had to go on this low carb diet, and on this diet, they couldn't have fruit. And without fail, I would have people every single time that had never expressed an interest in having fruit, that might have even fought me on eating fruit in the past. The second that it was no longer an option for them, were like, oh, I really was in the mood for like a banana today, and that kind of sucks that I can't have it. So when all of these programs are based around restriction and based around this thing that doesn't feel good, and you feel like you can't have it, and you feel like, well, my friends get to go to a party, can I go to a party? Can I drink? Can I order the thing that I want to order? Like, I can't do any of those things. That feels bad, and eventually your brain's going to be like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. This feels bad. This is like painful, and then that can cause sabotage as well. So it's that combination of the brain not enjoying pain and wanting to move away from pain, and also low self-confidence around this area, not because of anything that is your fault, but because of the methods that you've chosen were setting you up for failure. So now let's get into how to stop self-sabotage. But before we do, I am hosting a webinar next Tuesday, and even after next Tuesday, if you're not going to be able to catch it live, we're going to have the replay up. So when you get a chance, click out of here. We're going to have the link in the show notes. You can also go to our Instagram at NutrishMish. It'll be in our bio. Sign up either by clicking the link or in our Instagram bio. This is going to be happening on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. Or if it is way past that date, if you guys are listening on repeat, you can still click the link and we're going to have the webinar on repeat for you. But if you can attend live, we're going to have special things and prizes and things going on for people who are attending live. So if you can check it out live, definitely do. But you guys are not going to want to miss this webinar. This webinar is going to be a game changer for you. If some of the stuff that I'm saying around weight loss and the scale and the dieting cycle are resonating with you, you're going to want to check this out. By the end of this webinar, you are going to be thinking about nutrition and weight loss and everything totally differently. This is a webinar that we used to actually charge people for. We are doing it for free now just because I think the information is so incredibly valuable, and I think it will be life-changing for a lot of people to hear, and I think it will get people thinking so differently about this so that it'll help make everybody who hears it a little bit healthier, closer to their goals, and at least have a clearer path as to how to design their own nutrition philosophy, which is what we do at NutrishMish. So click out of here, click at the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can also check out the link in the show notes. Make sure you sign up for that webinar, and I can't wait to see you there. So now I'm going to give you 4 rules or principles or whatever you want to call them that you're going to want to start to implement to prevent sabotage from happening. So the first one is there is no stopping or starting. There is no on or off track. So I hear people say this all the time. They're like, oh, well, I'm off right now, or I'm going to get back on track Monday, or it was so hard getting back on track after a vacation, or, now's a little bit too hard. I'm just going to stop for an hour. I'm just going to be off for a little bit until things get a little bit easier, and then I'll be back on track. There is no on or off switch. Now, how does this relate to self-sabotage? So what happens is, first of all, when you feel like you're off, right? When you feel like you're not doing something the right way, that's going to maybe feel like a little bit of a failure for you, right? And then again, your brain wants to move away from failure and it wants to move towards things that make it feel good. So that's kind of how that piece of it starts. But the other thing you want to keep in mind is that when you're trying to develop a lifestyle change, and I kind of hate the term lifestyle change, but I feel like it's overly used and a little saturated, but that is what it is. If you're trying to develop a lifestyle change, well, part of life is vacations and holidays and weekends and social events and things like that. And when you're doing a diet and you're trying to lose weight through a diet, you can't do a lot of those things, quote unquote, correctly and still enjoy yourself, right? So you feel like you can't go to the party, you feel like you can't do this, you can't do that. So then when you do go to the party and you do go out to eat and you do order the thing you want to eat, you feel like, well, I'm off now. And then when you're off, that doesn't feel good because now you're failing at what you wanted to do. So then you're like, you know what, I'm just going to do it when things get a little easier, when it's a little bit quieter, whatever it may be. So there is no on or off, it's happening all the time. Now, when you're doing what we do at NutrishMish and you're developing your own nutrition philosophy, which is different, or optimizing your eating habits for yourself, what you're doing there is you're figuring out, okay, what do I need in my life that's going to make this so that I'm eating well most of the time, but I could also still enjoy the things that I like to enjoy. So for myself personally, if you were to go to a party with me, if you were to go to a wedding with me, I actually just did an Instagram post on this recently, you would see that I eat relatively normally. I eat exactly what I want to eat. And listen, sometimes I order the salad, but a lot of times I don't. A lot of times I get whatever the hell I want because I know if I'm eating well on the day-to-day most of the time, I can get away with the other things, right? So that's what you kind of have to do. You have to really work on developing your own nutrition philosophy and see okay, what are my non-negotiables? What do I really enjoy? What do I want? And then what am I okay, maybe giving up or not having. But that being said, when you're looking at how you're doing with all this stuff, you need to compare a weekend to a weekend. A weekend is not going to be the same as a Monday, right? When people are trying to eat well or something on a random Monday where nothing's happening, of course it's much easier than a weekend. If you're trying to compare a holiday to a random Tuesday, that's not a good comparison either. So the goal is, if you could say, for the circumstance, I'm handling this circumstance better than I normally would have, that's success. And that's a way better way of thinking about it than stopping or starting over and over again. So for example, let's say you're like, all right, I'm going to go on vacation. So normally you'd be like, I'm going to just eat whatever I want. I'm going to go into vacation mode. I'm going to literally eat anything and everything I want. And then when I get back, then I'm going to be so good. That's going to create a situation that you're going to want to self-sabotage over and over and over and over again. A better way to say it is, okay, you know what? I'm going on vacation. My goal is to handle this vacation maybe a little bit better than last vacation. So last vacation was a total shit show. I ate and drank literally everything I wanted. This time I'm going to do it differently. So for me, I'm just telling you personally, what I would say is, for me, if I'm going on vacation, I don't necessarily need a lot of like sweet drinks, but I definitely will want to drink. So I might do like one kind of like fun colada-y drink, but then I'll switch over to like tequila club or vodka club or something like that, because that doesn't bother me. If you're somebody that loves daiquiris or love pina coladas, then we can give that to you. Maybe we'll take somewhere else. For me, I'm not like a giant breakfast person. Like I don't need to have like a crazy breakfast. Like I could keep breakfast relatively healthy. But then like lunch or dinner, like I want to maybe have whatever I want to have there. So it might look like something like that. Or you could just be like, you know what? Last vacation, I totally just checked out. I ate everything I wanted. This vacation, maybe I was a little bit more mindful, or I moved around a little bit more. I took a walk on the beach, whatever that might look like for you. But when you don't have this like on-off switch about it, it makes it so much easier to stick to, but also it prevents self-sabotage from happening because you are successful. Like that's something that you can do and be successful at. When you're successful, your brain wants to move towards that because it feels good. If your brain feels like you're failing or you're always off, it's going to want to avoid that like the plague. So number one, there is no stopping or starting. It's happening all the time, whether you're realizing it or not. Your body doesn't know that you're in a timeout. Your body's responding to whatever you're eating, whether you're mentally in it or not. And then number two is managing your expectations. Here's what I mean by that. When you're subscribing to a diet, right, as we do sometimes with this culture, if you're trying to lose weight. So if you're subscribing to a diet, you're just following a diet, right? And the second that you can no longer follow that diet, you're off or you're not doing it. Or if something comes up and it's hard and you don't do it the way that you feel like you should have, then you're off, like we were saying before. So I think managing your expectations to be that not every week is going to be perfect, right? Not every week needs to be perfect either. Nothing in life is linear. I've never seen success come at anybody in a straight upwards line. If you look at any line graph, there's dips, right? Now, the overall trend, though, should be up. Like a really good example of that is like the stock market. So if I look at the stock market and I plot it hour by hour or day by day, it's going to be all over the place. But if I do that for a month and I look at the overall trend is up. We tend to focus on like the dips too much, right? And then when you have a dip, you want to like stop because you feel like you screwed up and then you're off. So when you're trying to develop a skill set, which that's what developing your own nutrition philosophy or learning how to eat well for yourself, that's what that is. And that's another way that's different than, doing a diet. Again, both will equal weight loss, I shouldn't say both will equal health. That's not necessarily true. Designing your own nutrition philosophy / improving your eating habits will definitely equal health. I can't say the same about every diet necessarily, but if you manage your expectations that there's going to be ebbs and flows and you're going to have some weeks that are really great and then you're going to have some weeks that are a little bit more challenging, but to like push through that, like that's what will give you the momentum to get to that next level. Because if you look at a graph, right, a line chart, you'll see like, okay, there's a little bit of a dip. That dip will give you the momentum to get to the next level if you use it that way. So I think if you go into it knowing like, okay, some things are going to come easy to me, some things are going to come harder, but if I work at anything enough, I'll get there. I'll get from point A to point B. That will also prevent self-sabotage from happening. Again, just to compare it to something else, I always compare, just because it's learning a skill set, right? I compare it to like learning a language. So if I'm trying to learn Spanish, the first couple chapters I might breeze through. I'd be like, oh, I know all these words now. But then it might get to the verbs and like sentence structure. And then I might be like, oh shit, this is a little bit harder. If I give up and I'm just like, no, I'm not doing this, like because I'm not good at this or I didn't get a good grade or whatever it is, or I can't get past this part, like again, that's self-sabotage, right? But if I'm like, all right, I know this part's gonna be a little bit harder. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of leeway. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of freedom here, but I'm gonna keep working at it. You can't keep working at something consistently and not eventually get it, right? So I think managing your expectations to expect there to be great weeks and not so great weeks, that's like inevitable. It's how are you using those weeks? Which brings me to number 3, use those weeks to learn. Like I love when my clients come in and they're like, oh my God, I had such a bad week. And after a while, if you're one of my clients, you'll know not to say that because those are not bad weeks. Those are the best freaking weeks. That's when you learn, right? That's when you learn about yourself. Like, look, I love when people, have great weeks and we're like, oh, everything went smoothly and we clap and we move on. The quote unquote, as people would call them, bad weeks are so much more valuable. So number 3 is learn from what's going on and how you're reacting to your nutrition or weight loss journey and tweak it. If something doesn't go right, tweak it. It's kind of like in football, if anyone's a football fan, right? Monday, they say Monday morning quarterbacking, right? Monday morning, they all watch the tape, they see what worked, they see what didn't work, and then they adjust for next time. If they didn't do that, like what a waste and missed opportunity. So just to recap really quick, number one, there is no stopping or starting. It's happening all the time. Number two, manage your expectations. There's going to be good weeks and there's going to be what you might call a not so great week, but that brings me to number three. It is a very good learning opportunity, and then you can tweak your strategy from there. So I have a million good examples of this. One, just kind of off the top of my head is I had somebody who this was recently actually, it was Memorial Day weekend, and she came in, she's like, oh my God, I had the worst week. And I was like, what happened? So we looked at her week and she's just like, I had a party on Sunday that I hosted, and then Monday, I was eating all the leftovers and it was crazy, and then Tuesday I didn't have anything in the house, so we ended up ordering it. It was like the whole thing snowballed. So she could have skipped her appointment that week and not come in, and she could have quote unquote gotten herself back on track, right? But then we would have missed this great learning opportunity, because what we noticed, I was like, okay, so here's the problem. The problem was you were hosting this party, right? You went grocery shopping for the party. You weren't thinking about yourself. So then you hosted this party. You were friggin' exhausted afterwards. You always do your grocery shopping over the weekend, so you missed that opportunity. And then you never had a chance to get more groceries in your house. So she's like, oh my God, that's exactly what happened. So now next time it's a holiday or next time that it's a party, she'll know exactly what to do in order to prevent that from happening in the future. But if she just checked out and got mad at herself and self-sabotaged, be it even for a week or for multiple weeks or months or forever, she would have completely missed that opportunity to learn and grow from this. So, not having that black or white thinking is huge. I think the black or white thinking is the cornerstone to where self-sabotage is born from. But you see how all of this stuff, we're taking these things that you might perceive as negative and we're turning them into positives, because your brain's going to want to move towards the positive stuff, right? Going to want to move away from the negative stuff. So we're making everything really feel good. And that's what's going to make you successful. So number 4 is make it feel good. Your brain's always trying to look for things that make it feel good. Food, we know, can make it feel good. Success makes it feel good. If you're doing things that don't feel good, it's a problem. Really good example, again, sort of nutrition, weight loss related, but not really, is with exercise. And this is my own personal thing, right? So I was a dancer forever, high school, college a little bit. And then when I graduated, I was like, oh, shit, I need to actually work out now, because I never had to put it into my day. I never had to work, because I was always doing something, right? So I never had to put it into my day. When I started doing it, I hated it, forever. I looked at it as a chore. I looked at it as something I had to do. Sometimes, maybe when I was younger, it was almost like a punishment for eating something. It was never positive. It was always this annoying thing on my to-do list that I didn't want to do. And of course, I'm oh, I felt so good afterwards. But my perception of doing it was a chore. Then I started doing this thing. There was levels to this, right? I started doing this thing where I was all right, you know what? I'm going to be on whatever piece of cardio equipment, but while I'm on the cardio equipment, I'm going to allow myself to watch Housewives of whatever. If you know me, I am a reality show junkie. If you ask me if I've seen any good TV, real good shows, my answer is no. I could tell you everything going on in every Bravo show ever created. So that's my thing. Not so much my fiance's thing. So I was you know what? I love watching Housewives of whatever. He doesn't. So I'm only going to let myself watch Housewives of whatever while I'm on the treadmill or whatever it was. So that was a really interesting stepping stone, because now I was so focused on the fun part for me, which was doing, watching the episode, that I was almost excited to do it. I was yeah, I kind of want to go on the treadmill, because I want to see, what Bethany was on at the time, who's my girl. I want to see what she's up to, whatever it was. So I made it about something else that was positive. Then after a while, I maybe went through a stint where I wasn't really working out, and I noticed my energy levels were so much worse. My productivity was so much worse. I even noticed my confidence was way better on the days that I exercised. I felt like I could freaking take on the day when I exercised, but then on days that I didn't have that same kind of energy to me. So now I exercise all the time, and I actually really enjoy it, and because it's about something so positive for me. And it took a long time to get there. Trust me, this was not an overnight thing, but everything shifted for me, and I was able to do it consistently, and I was able to develop a good, healthy habit when it felt good. When it didn't feel good, when it felt like a chore, I wanted no part of it. When I really, and look, there's a difference between me saying it and me feeling it. I knew, look, I have 2 undergrad degrees. My first one was in exercise physiology. I knew everything. I knew all the benefits. I knew everything about it. But until I felt it, until I felt the difference, right? Until I felt the energy, I felt the confidence. I was like, this is how I want to start my day. Until I found a way to enjoy it, it was impossible for it to become a habit or something I wanted to do consistently. It was impossible for me not to self-sabotage, because I would self-sabotage my exercise routine all the time. Every excuse in the world. I was like, I am an entrepreneur. I saw 100 clients today. I just worked a 15-hour day. I just did whatever. And they were all, as my business partner calls it, a valid excuse. They were all valid excuses, right? I should say mentor, not partner. Yeah, he was funny. He's always like, you always have valid excuses for things. They're all valid excuses, right? But there's still things that self-sabotage that prevent you from doing it. It was true. I did work a 12-hour day. It was true. I did see 1 million clients. It was true. I was tired. All of these things were true. But when I had to pile on exercise on top of that, I was like, there's no way. I just did all these things, and they were true, they were valid, but it was preventing me from reaching my goal. So that was a form of self-sabotage. Once I changed my perception of it, made all the difference in the world. And the whole idea was that I found a way to make it feel good. But my point is that there's a difference between like intellectually knowing, oh, I should be doing this, and like wanting to do it, like you feel it, like you want to do it. And again, all these things take a little bit of time, but this is how we prevent self-sabotage from happening. And if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, it takes so much time. First of all, it doesn't take that much time, but also like you're going to see progress along the way. And once you start building up that momentum, then it just keeps like going and going. You know, when you're constantly stop, start, it's impossible to get somewhere. I can travel slowly, maybe at 25 miles an hour, but eventually I'll reach my destination. If I go at 100 miles an hour and then I stop, and then I go at 100 miles an hour and then I stop, like it's going to take so much longer to get there. So if we can alleviate the sabotage and we can alleviate the stop-start, you'll be so successful. So to recap, when you're experiencing self-sabotage, which could be in the form of like, I had a bad day, might as well, blah, 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 or, you know everything you should be doing with nutrition and weight loss or whatever, but like you just can't do it consistently. Or you're like, oh, I had one cookie, so I might as well have all the cookies. Or this ice cream came into the house, so I need to eat it all to get it out of the house, so that way I can, all these things that are self-sabotage. A lot of it comes down to, in my opinion, at least in my experience, two things. Lack of confidence that you're going to be successful because of the past, experiences that you've had with this, in conjunction with that your brain doesn't like doing things that feel bad. So if we do these 4 things, you kind of really stop doing the stop-start thing. There is no on and off track. There is no, I'm getting back on track tomorrow. Like your body doesn't know you're in timeout. It's happening all the time. So if you can get out of that mentality and compare, no pun intended, apples to apples, compare a challenging week to a challenging week, or a vacation to a vacation, or a holiday to a holiday, and say like, okay, well, did I handle this holiday better than last holiday? Way better way to deal with it. Number 2, managing your expectations. There's going to be harder weeks. You're going to get to the proverbial Spanish verbs that might be a little bit harder than learning the nouns. It's going to happen. How are you dealing with that? Are you checking out? Are you stopping? Do you want to sabotage at that point? Or are you doing number 3, which is, are you learning from that? And then are you tweaking accordingly? Just like my woman who had a rough time on Memorial Day weekend. And lastly, does the whole thing feel good to you? Did you find a way to make it feel like empowering? Are you constantly trying to feel successful? If you're constantly feeling like you're failing, or you're constantly feeling like, well, I'm going to fail, or you're like, I always fail, at like your brain's going to want to check out from that. So you have to find a way of empowering yourself and amping yourself up, because if you can do those 4 things, you will never self-sabotage again, and you will hit every single, not even weight loss or nutrition goal, but you'll hit most goals in your life. So I hope that was helpful for you. So make sure that you sign up for our webinar, and then also our program, which all of these things that I'm talking about, they're cornerstones in our program. It's our Eat Right, Live Right program. Right meaning there is no one size fits all. There is no right for everybody. It's a framework that we use to help you design your nutrition philosophy that you can stick to forever. And we don't judge weight lost, or we don't judge, blood sugar, what number the lowest number you got to. We judge it by like, what were the permanent results? Did the weight stay off? Did the blood sugar stay low? Can I call you in a year and you're still eating well? That's how we judge success, and we are very successful in that way. So if you want to sign up for our Eat Right, Live Right program, it used to only be for people who lived locally here. Now we have it online, available to everybody. It includes one-on-one counseling. It includes our Nutristant online portal. It includes our app. It includes everything that you will need to make you successful. We have it down to a science at this point. So you can join the thousands and thousands of people that we have worked with that have lost the weight and kept it off and have stayed healthy. All right, guys, thank you so much for checking us out. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe, and I will check you guys out next week.